problem, reaction, solution. You start with something you want to introduce. Say you want to give more power to the police, you want to have more power to stop and search, more power to tap phones, or you want politicians to have more power to bring in a certain policy.
Sure.
You know that if you introduce that policy honestly and say, right, we're going to do this, there would be a mass reaction because people would say, excuse me, over here, that's a fascist state you're trying to introduce here. We're not having this.
Yeah, what about our Bill of Rights?
So what you do is you create a problem.
The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms intentionally allowed guns to be smuggled across the border into Mexico.
December 14th, 2010. The place, a dangerous smuggling route in Arizona, not far from the border. A special tactical border squad was on patrol when gunfire broke out, and Agent Brian Terry, shown here in a training exercise, was killed. The assault rifles found at the murder, similar to these, were traced back to a U.S. gun shop. Where they came from and how they got there is a scandal so large, some insiders say it surpasses the shootout at Ruby Ridge and the deadly siege at Waco. To understand why, it helps to know something about Project Gunrunner, run by ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
I am glad to see, like, Project Gunrunner is being discussed. I'm glad to see that you're working on working to find folks that smuggle drugs. I think that's critically important. Smuggle weapons, I think it's critically important.
Thank you, Senator. We certainly agree that aggressive enforcement of the gun laws that are on the books, getting at this smuggling through the E-Trace system, which is the ATFE system for identifying where an illegal gun, a gun that's been used illegally, a gun that's in Mexico that's seized, how it was sold, tracking down that process to try to find the gun smugglers, the gun runners, critically important.
Project Gunrunner deployed new teams of agents to the southwest border. The idea, to stop the flow of weapons from the U.S. to Mexico's drug cartels. But in practice, sources tell CBS News, ATF's actions had the opposite result. They allegedly facilitated the delivery of thousands of guns into criminal hands.
ATF and the Justice Department have denied that this ever happened when we spoke to them.
You were intentionally letting guns go to Mexico?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, the agency was.
An alcohol, tobacco, and firearms senior agent assigned to this Phoenix office since 2010, Dodson's job is to stop gun trafficking across the border. Instead, he says he was ordered to sit by and watch it happen. Investigators call the tactic letting guns walk, in this case into the hands of criminals who would use them in Mexico and the U.S. Dodson's bosses say that never happened. Now he's risking his job to go public.
I'm boots on the ground here in Phoenix and telling you we've been doing it every day since I've been here. Here I am. Tell me I didn't do the things that I did. Tell me you didn't order me to do the things that I did. Tell me it didn't happen. Now you have a name on it, you have a face to put with it. Here I am, someone now. Tell me it didn't happen.
You create a problem. People then react to that problem, and you encourage them through the media to say, this can't go on. Something must be done. What are they going to do about it? And at that point, they, who have covertly created the problem but got someone else to be blamed for it, glean that reaction, do something, then openly offer the solutions to the problems they have themselves created. Problem, reaction, solution. So if you want more power to the police, more stop and search, more draconian laws, then and you want people not just not to oppose it, but to demand you do it, then you let society break down so there is more crime.
Sure, you don't even have to actually suggest it. You just create the situation and the public comes to you demanding that you change it.
Exactly.
It was against the backdrop of the horrific drug cartel violence in Mexico that Holder broached the idea of ramping up gun control here in the U.S.
There are just a few gun-related changes that we would like to make, and among them would be to reinstitute the ban on the sale of assault weapons. I think that will have a positive impact in Mexico, at a minimum.
That's your Attorney General talking about selling out the Second Amendment and your rights for the benefit of the government of Mexico.
After talks at Calderon's official residence, Obama praised what he called Mexico's heroic fight against the narco kingpins.
The president's message here in Mexico is that there's work to be done north of the border, too. halting the flow of guns and cash to the cartels, and curbing America's insatiable demand for drugs.
Which led Calderon to say he'd love to see the Clinton-era ban on assault weapons reinstated. That's something Obama pledged to seek as a candidate, but now Congress is pushing back.
None of us are under any illusion that reinstating that ban would be easy.
At this hotel in Nogales, Mexico, south of Tucson, a Mexican state police director was shot and killed here by a team of assassins using American weapons. The director, Juan Pavon, died last November in a hail of gunfire and hand grenades, one day after meeting with his American counterparts.
They assassinated a very close ally of U.S. law enforcement, a police commander.
Most of the traffickers' weapons are bought for them in the U.S. by so-called straw buyers, Americans.
Special Agent Newell, you said firearms are not in and of themselves contraband. That's true, unless they are sold to, possessed by, or acquired by a prohibited person, which would include a straw purchaser. So my question to you is this. Did ATF have contemporaneous or pre-knowledge of any straw purchasers purchasing weapons in Arizona?
Well, sir, straw purchasers are not prohibited individuals unless they've been convicted of some crime.
No, it is against the law to purchase a gun knowing you're going to transfer it to someone else, to therefore get around the fact that the person you're going to give it to is a prohibited person. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, that's a straw purchaser.
Sources tell CBS News licensed gun dealers often wanted no part of selling to suspicious characters who could be supplying cartels, but that ATF enlisted the gun dealers as paid confidential informants and encouraged them to sell even more. ATF has asked me to assist in an official investigation, reads one agreement.
It's a conflict of interest for ATF to ask these gun dealers to sell to these straw purchasers because ATF controls whether they stay in business by issuing them their license.
You got to remember, they were cooperating with the ATF because the ATF asked them to.
If ATF wants to, they can find some little piece of paperwork that wasn't filed correctly or something else and say, you know, dangling their license in front of them saying, you really don't want to help us with this government program? And there's a sense of intimidation that if you're not working with ATF, you know, there's consequences for that.
They did everything that they were told to do, and then some. They kept even pounding people saying, this is ungodly. This same guy is coming in here. And we got ATF saying, sell the guns. Sell the guns. Something's wrong here.
ATF encouraged gun dealers to sell to straw buyers. Emails prove that at least one dealer worried prophetically about that risk. He wrote to ATF about his concerns that a Border Patrol agent might end up facing the wrong end of one of those weapons. ATF supervisors told the dealer, don't worry.
I'm William Newell of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. As the former special agent in charge of the Bureau's Phoenix Field Division from June 2006 to May of this year, I oversaw ATF operations in the states of Arizona and New Mexico, which includes 552 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border. I appear before you today to discuss ATF's Operation Fast and Furious, an ongoing and active OCDETF Strike Force investigation. It was not the purpose of the investigation to permit the transportation of firearms into Mexico, and to the best of my knowledge, none of the suspects in this case was ever witnessed by agents crossing the border with firearms.
Mr. Newell, I ask you this question very simply. No, wait a second. You've been here as a paid not answerer so far, and I appreciate that you've been here as a paid not answerer, but there comes a point where I go, wait a second. 730 weapons bought by a man who had no money. Every penny he bought with, he had to get from somebody. You knew that at some point. You knew who was buying them, and you allowed it to continue.
In March 2010, Oriol Patino bought 8 weapons at this store and claimed the guns were for himself. 2 days later, police found Patino's guns in Manuel Celis Acosta's car, yet the ATF arrested neither. In fact, agents allowed Patino to lie on applications and buy another 300 assault weapons for Acosta, spending over $300,000 while on food stamps.
You knew from credible information, your organization knew that in fact you had a buyer providing the money to Patino and others, that he was taking possession of those weapons, and you knew with specificity that those weapons, some of them had already ended up in Mexico. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what was the first date? 09, what was the first date? It looks like It seems like you knowingly allowed these weapons to get out of your control, knowingly, to someone you knew was trafficking into Mexico. You saw the results, you allowed it to continue, and now you're telling us we don't let guns walk. Well, I've got to tell you, before this investigation ends, I've got to have somebody in your position or a justice admit you knowingly let guns walk, because right now your agents, both the agents here today from Mexico and the agents that were part of Phoenix and part of this program who became whistleblowers, have told us you were letting guns walk. It's only you and Mr. McMahon and other people at Justice who continue to come before this committee and say we don't let guns walk. Are they lying or are you lying?
Sir, in this investigation, it is my opinion that we did not let guns walk.
You're entitled to your opinion, not to your facts.
What happened here to allow these guns to slip through?
Alex, they didn't slip through. They were designed to be let walk.
But Representative, I know you say they're designed to let walk, and it's in an effort to try to catch the big fish, if you will. To the heads of these cartels have these rather little fish that are just kind of trafficking these things. But if that's the end result of the program, you'd think that they'd be looking at where all these guns were going.
The fact is, these guns were able to go and be unaccounted for. And in fact, we had the Justice Department representative swear to us that they never let guns walk, and now we have actual memos in which they're concerned about so many guns walking.
I'm boots on the ground here in Phoenix and telling you we've been doing it every day since I've been here. Here I am. Tell me that it didn't happen. Tell me I didn't do the things that you told me to do. Tell me I didn't see the things that I saw, all right? And tell me we weren't doing it.
The aim of the ATF is to try to stop the flow of guns. I think they do a good job in that regard. Questions have been raised by ATF agents about the way in which some of these operations have been conducted. The notion that you would let guns walk in a firearms case is, for me, absurd. Absurd. And it was the reason why I said it cannot happen.
ATF named the case Fast and Furious. This surveillance video obtained by CBS News shows suspected drug cartel suppliers carrying boxes of weapons to their cars at a Phoenix gun shop. Those long boxes being loaded into the red car are AK-47 type assault rifles.
He's armed again, carrying another, appears to be 5 boxes of hard-case Pelican that would hold a pistol.
So it turns out ATF not only allowed the guns to walk, they videotaped it.
Acting director at the time, Melson, said that he had no idea what was going on. He didn't know the extent. And then someone had sent him or showed you, one of your committees, an email showing that Mr. Melson not only knew about it, he actually watched videotape of the transactions going on. Is he complicit in is he in trouble?
Well, he should be.
A current employed federal official, high-ranking official, is taking the fifth in an investigation that Eric Holder says has nothing there. There's been nothing done wrong. People do not take the fifth when they're working for the federal government and resign and get a lawyer if, in fact, they have nothing to hide. And this is somebody who had a direct conduit to the top levels of justice, both Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer.
On February 4th, Assistant AG Ronald Weitz responded to Senator Grassley denying that the ATF had walked guns, and that letter ended up being withdrawn. As Mr. Issa has said, lying to Congress is a federal felony. You know, I don't want to say that you have committed a felony, Mr. Attorney General, but obviously there have been statements so misleading that a letter had to be withdrawn.
Well, first let me make something very clear, and in response to an assertion that you made or hinted at, nobody in the Justice Department has lied.
Why was the letter withdrawn?
The letter was withdrawn because there's information in there that was inaccurate. The Justice Department letter of February.
Okay, well, tell me what's the difference between lying and misleading Congress in this context?
Well, if you want to have this legal conversation, it all has to do with your state of mind and whether or not you had the requisite intent to come up with something that can be considered perjury or a lie.
The American people need the truth. They haven't gotten the truth from what has been coming out of the Justice Department in the last year, and they were relying on Congress to get the truth. But the answers that you have given so far are basically saying, well, gee, somebody else did it. You know, there is really no responsibility within the Justice Department. You know, the thing is that if we don't get to the bottom of this, and that requires your assistance on that, there is only one alternative that Congress has, and it's called impeachment, where our subpoena powers are plenary, and there can't be any type of illegal immunity or privilege that can be asserted on that.
And look at this. Look at this. ISSA is not going to go forward with any type of impeachment, and they can, against the head of the Justice Department. He says it's up to Obama. Oh, Obama, completely Chicago Mafia run with Rezko and Blagojevich and 500 million here and 600 million there to energy companies that don't build anything. Just a total ripoff, total theft. And General Electric heading up their economic council, openly shutting power plants down all over the country that they don't own because they run the program and have been given a waiver. I mean, just bald-faced criminality.
With respect to Solyndra and Fast and Furious, you know, I think I've been very clear that I have complete confidence in Attorney General Holder in how he handles his office. He has been very aggressive in going after gun running and cash transactions that are going to these transnational drug cartels in Mexico. There's been a lot of cooperation between the United States and Mexico on this front. He's indicated that he was not aware of what was happening in Fast and Furious. Certainly I was not, and I think both he and I would have been very unhappy if somebody had suggested that guns were allowed to pass through that could have been prevented by the United States of America.
Let's first listen to the Attorney General. He came before this committee back in May. Here's what he said.
When did you first know about the program, officially I believe called Fast and Furious? To the best of your knowledge, what date?
I'm not sure the exact date, but I probably heard about Fast and Furious for the first time over the last few weeks.
He says over the last few weeks. That is on May 3rd, 2011. Listen to this interview the President of the United States, not the Attorney General, the President of the United States, had with CNN Espanol back in March.
There have been problems. I heard on the news about this story that Fast and Furious, where allegedly guns were being run into Mexico, and ATF knew about it but didn't apprehend those who had sent it. Eric Holder, the Attorney General, has been very clear that he knew nothing about this.
The Mexican government complains that they were not informed about the Fast and Furious operation. Did you authorize this operation, and was President Calderon properly informed about it?
Well, first of all, I did not authorize it. Eric Holder, the Attorney General, did not authorize it. He's been very clear that our policy is to catch gun runners and put them into jail. So what he's done is he's assigned an IG, an Inspector General, to investigate what exactly happened here.
Who authorized it?
Well, we don't have all the facts. That's why the IG is in business to collect the facts.
You were not even informed about it?
Absolutely
This investigation will be complete. People who have screwed up will be held accountable. It's very upsetting to me to think that somebody showed such bad judgment that they would allow something like that to happen, and we'll find out who and what happened in this situation. We'll make sure that it gets corrected.
Have you spoken to President Obama about Fast and Furious?
I don't think that I have. I see the President...
That's okay. If you haven't, you haven't. Twice, the President of the United States has gone before the American people and said that you had nothing to do with this, you weren't involved in it, you weren't engaged in it, yet you said you've never spoken to the President. How is it that he would know that you haven't been involved, you weren't involved in this, and he can make such a claim if you've never even spoken to him about it?
So what do you think the penalty should be for a cabinet member, sworn officer of the law, who comes to testify before Congress and knowingly lies?
Well, hypothetically, there's a perjury statute, there's a false statement statute. I don't know what the penalties are. I mean, it's 10 years. I'm not sure what whatever. We have something in Title 18 that already answers that question.
New documents obtained by CBS News show Attorney General Eric Holder was sent briefings on the controversial Fast and Furious operation as far back as July 2010. That directly contradicts his statement to Congress. Listen to what Holder told a Judiciary Committee hearing on May 3rd this year.
I'm not sure the exact date, but I probably heard about Fast and Furious for the first time over the last few weeks.
Yet internal Justice Department documents show that at least 10 months before that hearing, Holder began receiving frequent memos discussing Fast and Furious. They came from the head of the National Drug Intelligence Center and Assistant Attorney General Lanny Brewer.
We've had testimony in front of our committee that says justice never lets guns walk. And now we have written proof that they were concerned about the guns walking. They were concerned about the optics of press interviews in which they were going to talk about problems, including Brian Terry's murder. And very clearly, this was not hundreds of pages of reports. This was the key weekly briefing that the Attorney General received, on which there was a paragraph on Fast and Furious repeatedly. So to say, when asked specifically about Fast and Furious, he didn't understand the question. He certainly had to know that every week he was seeing briefings on Fast and Furious. He had to at least say, I'm familiar with the name, what is it you mean? Or that I don't fully understand everything as well as I did 2 weeks before. Instead, in fairness, both to myself and to Jason Chaffetz, the Attorney General implied that he had never heard of this.
You caught him in lies. Can you explain to everybody specifically what these lies are, and are there going to be any consequences to an Attorney General lying to Congress?
Well, one of the unfortunate problems is we have to refer to the Justice Department for prosecution.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
If we lie to the government, we go to jail. Case in point, Martha Stewart, Barry Bonds might go to jail, and Roger Clemens might go to jail for just simply lying to the government. But when the government lies to us, nothing happens to them.
I get more beautiful looking every day, yeah.
Have you spoken to Secretary Napolitano about Fast and Furious?
No.
Remember, Agent Terry was killed in December, mid-December, and then we had Jaime Zapata, who was killed in Mexico, 2 officers shot, February 15th. On February 16th, you and Secretary Napolitano issued a press release. It's titled, Secretary Napolitano and Attorney General Holder form a joint task force to assist Mexico's investigation into yesterday's shooting of 2 ICE agents in Mexico. At the very beginning of this press release, Secretary of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano and Attorney General Eric Holder today met to discuss this issue. And how is it that you and Secretary Napolitano said you never even talked or discussed, even brought up or had any discussion about Fast and Furious? When did you first speak with Eric Holder about Fast and Furious?
I don't believe I've ever spoken with Eric Holder about Fast and Furious.
Was it the Department of Homeland Security's policy to allow guns to go south into Mexico if they were involved in Fast and Furious? I'm looking for a yes or no.
No.
She's there being grilled saying she knew nothing. Now you see her at the press conference where this is all being admitted.
U.S. and Mexican leaders say they will soon name a group to develop strategies for stopping the flow of weapons and drugs across the border. Word of the agreement comes after Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano and Attorney General Eric Holder met with their Mexican counterparts just outside Mexico City.
There's no question that I think the vast majority of the weapons, and especially the high-powered weapons that are found here in Mexico that are seized by the Mexican police, the Mexican army, are weapons that come from the United States.
Why are we ruled by chicken neck scum that should be so easy to defeat? Why? Why is this why do good people just lay down so every form of trash can run over them? Let's go to David Ogden. Let's go to the next piece of trash.
Specifically to facilitate gun tracing activity which targets the illegal weapons and their sources in the United States. DOJ's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives is increasing its efforts by adding 37 new employees in 3 new offices using $10 million in Recovery Act funds and redeploying 100 personnel to the southwest border in the next 45 days to fortify its Project Gunrunner, which is aimed at disrupting arms trafficking between the United States and Mexico.
Then the Department of Justice moving their agents down there, as David said, and increasing tracing. That will help us identify who is putting those arms into the arms, those guns into the arms of the traffickers moving south. And out of that, there can reasonably be seen more prosecution of actual arms dealers who are intentionally and knowingly putting arms into the hands of the smugglers. So that is part of the reason why the Department of Justice is such an essential part of this initiative on Mexico.
There she is saying we're taking the guns in, we're tracing it, we got agents there. 2.5 years ago, March 24, 2009, at the press conference with the other slime bags. These are a bunch of criminal jackasses. I've had it with them. I mean, how much do we put up with from these crooks? And why do they all look like they've had sex change operations? I mean, I'm sorry. I shouldn't even attack them at that level. I just can't handle it anymore.
Like I said, if we lie to the government, we go to jail. They lie to us all the time, and they get promoted.